Thank you all for joining from various locations. Maybe you can as well add, we make this session as interactive as possible, so you can as well add your motivation for learning. I can see most of us here are L&D professionals. I want to see what motivates all of us here to learn. Personally, it's about career progression and what is in store for me if I get to advance my skills. I don't know about you, so probably if you can in the chat, let me know your motivation for learning. And yeah, I accept honest answers only. So whatever motivates you, please put it in the box. Thank you. So we will be exploring learning pathways. First of all, of course, the what, the why, and the how is what we will look at today. Okay, perfect. So we start with the focus. We'll be looking at building roles that align with aligned learning pathways. Of course, structuring curriculum for real career progression. It's very important because most colleagues will want something that will add value. I will look at the motivation to learn from all of you, but in most situations, someone will want to learn something that will help them advance in their roles, that will help them perform so that they can be able to climb the career ladder. Of course, we'll also look at the learning design pitfalls, and now we can be able to avoid them. So the what are these learning pathways? So these are technically routes that someone will take in advancing their skills. And looking actually at why we need these learning pathways is because it aligns the learning to a clear skills framework. So it's not about guesswork or one size fit all or something out of the blues. It's something that is aligned to a particular skills framework. We will look briefly at the competency framework, which you can be able to map it to. And then, of course, it also supports career pathways and progression, which is very important. One of the main motivations for learning technically is to ensure that you are doing good in your job, you are performing better, and of course, that you have positioned yourself skill-wise in a very good place to advance and progress. So with learning paths, you can be able to achieve that. Remember, it's about, as an L&D leader, it's not about you as a learning and development person. It's about that colleague who you will want to develop their skills. So look at what they want, not what you want. Of course, it also ensures that learning is relevant to different roles, which is very critical because in an organization, we have different capabilities that we need to build across different departments. So as an L&D professional, you can be able to achieve that because you will know what specific skills for specific roles, and you can be able to have some interventions to make sure that you are achieving that. And then, of course, strengthens the organizational capability, which is very critical. One thing about when we talk about competency framework and capability framework, when we talk of competency, it's more about the individual, but eventually it builds the entire organization capability. So it's very important to have these learning pathways. So technically, it removes the confusion by offering a more focused approach to learning. So we look at the how. How can you be able to have these learning pathways or make sure that these learning pathways are effective? The most important point is you can be having the learning pathways, but they are not effective. So how can you be able to achieve that? First of all, you need to identify the business needs. Those are the pain points. Which skills do you need in the organization to solve which problems? I attended a session recently, and they said, remember, learning only solves problem where there is no lack of knowledge, like, or lack of skills. Of course, there are so many things in the organization that affects performance, whether individual teams or organizational performance. But what are those needs that can be solved by learning? So you need to identify those. You also need to define clear objectives. What gets you there? How can you be able to get to that particular point? And in this particular way, now you can be able to think about these learning pathways. Of course, you need to engage key stakeholders. As an L&D person, first of all, once you engage key stakeholders, you get to understand their real needs, which make it relevant to real world challenges. And of course, apart from just getting the real needs, you actually also get to get their buy-in, because even these learning pathways, you need to engage them so that they can be able to buy to that idea. Because we will look at it and we will look at the skills that you will need. As an L&D, you are not an expert, for example, in a sales and marketing role, but by engaging the stakeholders in that particular department, you can be able to understand their reals. What are the challenges their people are facing in executing their roles? And then, of course, you need to develop a competency framework, which we will look at it shortly. So, to have a learning path, you need to have a framework, a career framework, a competency framework. And this competency framework technically helps you to identify the individual competencies and skills for specific roles. Also, the required behavior. Performance is not just about the competencies and skills, but also the behavior, which is critical. So, with this competency framework, you need to understand that which behaviors are required for which particular role. And in this particular case, also within the framework, you can be able to identify the levels. So it has to have like a progressive levels. For someone who is relatively new in the job or in their career, they could be in foundation. So that's the basics of that particular skills is what they require for them to perform in their roles. You will have a practitioner, and then you will have an expert. And in this particular case, when we talk of an expert, we even get to a level where someone is certified. And so, in terms of skills, alignment to roles, you just don't look at the roles, but you also look at the levels in terms of, is this someone new in the field? Is this someone who is experienced? Is this someone who is an expert? And now they are actually progressing towards leadership in terms of mentoring and coaching the rest of the team. So competency framework is really critical. And we will look at an example of this competency framework, just a simple one, so that you can be able to replicate for various roles. And then, of course, you also need to look at, of course, when doing this also, you need to do the structuring. So the step number one is to name that particular skill that is required, and you need to actually describe it. So like someone in the, say, we look at the skills that they're looking, probably negotiation skills. In this particular skill, is it required by someone who is at the foundation level, practitioner, or expert level? And why is it required? How do they apply in their day-to-day roles? That is the step number two. And then, of course, you need to explain how that particular role skill supports the job holder. So look at the good learning paths. What does it entail? First of all, it needs to be successive in terms of before you proceed to the next level, you need to have completed the first level. You saw the foundation level, so you cannot go to the expert level skills before you complete the foundation level skills, because we understand that actually the complexity of every skills, as you advance, it's always good to start with the basic so that you can be able to understand that. So actually, the same thing with these learning paths, it needs to be successive. Then also it has to have some alternatives. So there are mandatory and optional courses. In that particular path, you don't have to do everything in that role. There are some functional skills that could be mandatory. And then there are some cross-functional skills that you might not need in that particular level. And then also you need to have the levels, that is in terms of hierarchies, the foundation level, the expert level, the practitioner level, in that order. Actually, the foundation, practitioner, and the expert in that particular order. And then, of course, to facilitate that, you need to have well-designed learning journeys. And the learning journeys actually is the experience. Imagine the learning paths as the routes that you need to take to get to a specific destination. But the learning journey now is the experience. How will you experience that particular journey? So for you to be able to achieve the whole objective of making sure that learning is systematic, you actually need to make sure that you have well-defined journeys as well. And we will look at learning journeys briefly, what it needs to have for you to achieve that. So in terms of learning journey, the design itself, you need to have clear objectives in terms of what needs to be achieved. It needs to have an element of micro-learning. So you need to have bite-sized lessons. Remember, they say the attention span is diminishing every other time, I think, because of so many things happening, so many, things happening around that. That particular attention span is actually growing smaller. So you need to make sure that you have bite-sized lessons. You need to have real-world applications. So one of the requisites for adult learning is relevance. Someone will want to learn something that they can be able to apply in their real work environment. And it's not something that is, like just learning for the sake of it. They want to, whether it takes 5 minutes to learn something, as long as it's applicable in my role, that is very important. So that is critical. You also need to have diverse resources, whether videos, you could have forums, learning sets. That's making sure that someone can be able to achieve that with multiple resources. And then, of course, it needs to be personalized and flexible. So people learn differently. How can you be able to achieve that? You need to make sure it's flexible and personalized. And also, it needs to have some motivation and rewards. At the moment, as I present, I would love to look at the charts and see your motivation in terms of learning, what motivates you to learn. So you need to also have that. And also you need to track progress and do communication in terms of reminders and updates. So we look at this particular learning path for sales role. So in practice, we are looking at level 1, which is the foundation. So it's just the basic knowledge, delivering a basic pitch, for example. Of course, listening actively and asking simple questions. So these are just the skills that someone at a particular level would need for them to operate. Of course, using CRM system to log activities, and also making sure that those processes work. And then also there is what in every stage or every level, we will have what we call a progression gates. So in this particular progression gates, you need to make sure that by the time this person moves to the next level, they can independently manage simple sales conversations. So actually, that will be what I will call a pass mark for you to go to the next level. And before you proceed to the level 2, you need to have done that. So in terms of the level, and that one can happen actually in 1 to 3 months. And this one will be basically for someone who is new in a role. It could be someone changing departments. It could be someone who is recently employed. And so those are the skills that they will need for them to perform at that level. Then we go to the next level. So I had broken this into like 4 levels. I didn't want to go with the foundation, profession, and then expert levels. I actually wanted to go into the 4 levels so that we can see it clearly. And then again, there is now the developing, that is the level number 2. And that is, of course, running structured discovery calls, qualifying leads effectively, of course, handling common objections, and managing personal pipeline. So at level 1, this person is not able to do, for example, handling common objection. It's more about just the basics. And then for this level as well, it has a progression gate. And in this progression gate, you will look at, consistently processes opportunities through the pipeline. That is the point you can be able to say this person has achieved. And actually, the progression gate will be the achievement of the objectives that you will have set for that particular level. And in that particular level, we are looking at happening between 4 to 6 months. It can vary. You don't need to take this long to, move from one level to another. It depends which roles. So there are some levels that someone will be done within a month, depending on roles. And then, of course, level number 3, which is proficient. So this is someone who can now lead negotiation confidently. So you need to think about negotiation skills. How can you make sure that this person is equipped when it comes to negotiation? Of course, presenting compelling value-based proposals. So these are the skills that they will need. What are you going to do as an L&D person to make sure that these skills are actually acquired? And then, of course, someone who closes deals independently. Remember, someone who is in level 1, level 2 will still be getting the support. But someone operating at level 3 is someone who needs to close deals independently. So this is someone who need to have skills on how to close those deals. And then, of course, developing account plans, which is also very critical because it's a more complex level compared to the previous 2 levels. Of course, progression gate, which is actually the outcome of the objectives that you had set for that particular level, is delivering reliable revenue and customer satisfaction. And that one you can be able to know through customer surveys, for example. And then, so that one can be happening within 7 to 9 months. And then the last level now, which is level number 4, is actually the advanced level. And in this advanced level, now this is someone who I can say is in leadership. They have grown and they are actually ready even to take up leadership role. So, so this is someone who needs to manage complex and multi-stakeholder deals. This is someone who needs to lead strategic account growth. This is someone also who will need now some skills on mentoring and coaching, because probably they are mentoring junior colleagues. And then, of course, influencing cross-functional teams, whether it's finance. So also someone who needs to have some influencing skills. And in this particular case, because it's the final level, we don't have like a progression gate, but you have an outcome. So the outcome is someone who is ready for senior sales, key accounts, or sales leadership role. We look at these competency mapping. And in this case, I've just also taken the sales role. So looking at the competency area in terms of whether it's product knowledge, sales processes, customer engagement, negotiation, or leadership. So at the foundation level, when it comes to product knowledge, this person needs just to have the basic knowledge, sales process, just aware what is happening with his sales process. When it comes to customer engagement, they're not doing it on their own. This is someone who is still supported, and that's why I said they will not necessarily need those skills at that particular level. So when it comes to negotiation, they also don't participate in negotiations, but they could be part of the team who have gone for negotiations, but it's not left to him because otherwise he will not deliver. So at this foundation level, he's just there to serve. At the foundation level also, he doesn't need leadership skills at that particular point. So when you are developing, like an individual development plan for someone who is at the foundation level, you don't need to include leadership skills. And then someone who is at the second level, which is actually developing, when it comes to product knowledge, they actually know it and they apply it when they are doing their sales role. And then, of course, in their sales processes, they are consistent, they know how to use the systems, and they can be able to deliver. And then customer engagements, they can do it independently, whether making calls, handling rejections, and resolving issues at that particular level that does not need any escalations. So when it comes to negotiations, this is someone who will participate in the negotiations. So when we talk of negotiation skills, we will have the basic negotiation skills, we will have advanced negotiation skills. So someone who is at developing level will just need the basic negotiation skills that can be utilized. But someone who actually is in the professional or advanced level will need an advanced negotiation skills, because now this is someone who will need actually leads those negotiations, for example, within proficient. But back to developing level, at negotiation skills, just the basic, because just for participating in those negotiation meetings. Of course, when it comes to leadership, this is someone who we talk about self-leadership. They are able, to manage their time. They are able to regulate, for example, their emotions and deal with people. So at that particular level is just more about them, self-leadership. And then when it comes to the proficient level, we are talking about when it comes to product knowledge, this is someone who is very confident about what they're selling. This is someone who has understood the sale process in out, whether there are any challenges, they can even be able to do basic troubleshooting. And then, of course, when it comes to customer engagement, this is someone who is, I can say, influential. He can actually influence the customers to probably buy. So if you look at it, that is a different level actually of influencing. And then, of course, when it comes to negotiation, someone at that particular level can be able to actually lead negotiation. So this is someone who can engage with the customers and lead actually that discussion. Remember, someone at level number 2, which is developing, will not be in a position to lead a negotiation team, for example, but they can be able to participate in that particular conversation. But someone who is at proficient level is someone who is supposed to lead those negotiations. And this can tell you actually, this is someone who will need advanced negotiation skills to be able to achieve that. And then, of course, when it comes to leadership, someone at proficient level is not leading a team yet, but they have what we call informal influence. They can be able to influence a team to do more in terms of, or to go in a specific direction. So as much as they don't have that leadership position, they need to have those leadership skills to be able to influence the rest of the team. And then when it comes now to the final level, which in most cases, we can say someone is certified because they will have gone through all the skills required for that particular role. We are talking about product knowledge. This is someone who is very strategic. This is someone who can even think about, how to package the product better when you are presenting it to the customer. And then, of course, when it comes to sale processes, is he or she is innovative, like they can be able to, they understand everything about the sale process, and they can be able to even improve the sales process itself on its own. And then, of course, we have customer engagement, and this at this particular level, this is someone who is a trusted advisor. This is someone who, like, the customers will actually want to approach and say, tell us more about this. Can you advise what is the better option? So this is someone who really understands customer engagement, and this is someone who has had the trust of the customers, so that they will want to actually engage with him or her. And then, of course, looking at negotiation. So this is someone who has really mastered negotiations, and the person can be able to lead those negotiations, can be able to really influence the customers based on those advanced negotiation skills that you will have developed. And then, of course, the element of leadership. And at this particular level, if you saw actually the outcome that you are looking at when we have someone at this particular level, is to make sure that this person is ready to take up leadership role. And this is someone who can be able to do coaching and mentoring. So also when you do your learning paths or the competency mapping for this person, now these are the skills that you will want to build. These are the skills on coaching. These are the skills on mentoring. These are the skills on, just general team management, because this is now someone who is stepping into a role that they need to oversee a team. And in this case, actually, for experience role, when we speak about these learning paths, sometimes it looks like we are talking about someone who is new to a role, or someone who is new in an organization. But again, this learning paths is actually applicable even to colleagues who are experienced. So you have sales direct, what do they want to learn? So for them, you will realize now these are the things that they will want to learn on leadership, leading a team, coaching, mentoring. But in what I will advise in this particular case, also for the experienced colleagues, is to make sure that you engage them. We talked about stakeholder engagement. Those are the people who understand their teams. And also the main person in any L&D intervention is the learner. So you need to engage them, let them share the gaps that will want to be filled in their roles, so that you can be able to curate something that is applicable and relevant to them. Yes, so thank you. I think that was my final slide. Oh, sorry. I almost forgot to talk about the learning design pitfalls. So there's so many pitfalls that we can have when you're doing the learning designs. And first of all, is actually treating the learning design as a product and not as a process. So this is a process that can be improved. You don't treat it as a final product. And then, of course, you need, sometimes you design learning without enough focus on how change happens. So, we are living in a world of change. We need a change of behavior. So in designing your learning, you don't want to understand how that person will change that particular behavior. So you don't understand the context or the complexities, or you keep ignoring them. And then, of course, there is lack of time and space for learning to be embedded. And if you keep learning, but there is no opportunity to practice, then it might not actually achieve the objectives. And then, of course, overloading the learners with disconnected opportunities. And actually, this happens because in most cases we don't have these learning paths. So every L&D opportunity, you throw it to the learners. We have so many learning opportunities, whether it's in the e-learning platforms or within the organization, share, say, community of experts sharing the learnings. You don't want people to just keep doing anything that will come across, but whenever they have like a path, we actually get to avoid this problem of overloading the learners with disconnected opportunities. So how can you be able to do that? So we have some solutions here. I will love, in the next slides, we will have some questions that we really need to ask ourselves as we do our learning designs. First of all, we look at these particular solutions. And actually, one of the solutions is re-anchoring the course to capability and not content. And now this is actually where competency framework comes in. Like, what capabilities, what competencies do you really want to build, and not just designing just for the sake of it, just throwing content. Remember, we spoke about what are the skills, what are the competencies. So for someone who is at advanced level, when we talk about negotiation skills, what level, what skills does this person need? So it's about that capability. What do you want this person to do at that particular level, and not basically just the content? And then, of course, breaking the course into learning chunks, and we spoke about micro learning, so that also you don't get to overload people, making sure that, when you talk of micro learning, also there is that flexibility. And then, of course, for every learning event, you make sure that there is like on the job application, the relevance or real world situations, you really need to look at that. So we look at these simple checklists that you can actually use to avoid these pitfalls. And one of the questions that you need to ask yourself is, have you designed it to adapt as you learn more? So learning designs need to be agile, like it changes with situations. Okay, of course, do you know how this learning is expected to change behavior? So if you take someone to communication skills training, what do you expect to see in terms of the changes? How is it going to change that particular behavior? When we spoke about the competency mapping, we spoke about the elements of skills, competencies, and the behavior. So you really need to ask yourself how that particular learning is expected to change that particular behavior. And then, of course, you need to check if you have accounted for context, time, and real constraints. So there are so many things happening outside there. Have you looked at that particular context? What are the constraints? And that's why now this is where we really need to engage the stakeholders, because they could understand the context better, the time, and the real constraints within their areas. And then, of course, how will you know if it's working? So you need to have like an evaluation mechanism to make sure that it's actually delivering the impact. And then, of course, if it's not working, what will you change? So those are the questions that you really need to ask yourself to avoid those pitfalls. That is it. Thank you. In case of any question, I'm here to answer. Any input, it's good. We are all, most of us here, L&D professionals. Any input, any question. Thank you.